How come in Homecoming, the spider suit gives Peter Parker a bunch of functions that Peter doesn't know about? Because he made the web shooters, so it doesn't make any sense that he wouldn't know what features they have. The Avengers were already at the new base in Civil War, so how come Spider-Man hasn't heard about it yet? How come in Civil War, Peter calls The Empire Strikes Back a really old movie, and he doesn't really seem to be all that familiar with it, but now he's like a Star Wars mega fan? Okay, sure. You know, I could sit here and nitpick all day. I could force myself to come up with reasons to complain. And I went into this movie not expecting to enjoy it all that much. But what can I say? Homecoming is the best superhero movie that I've seen in a long time. Not only that, but it's the best teen comedy movie that I've seen in a long time too.
Listen, I know school sucks.
Peter, you still with us?
Yeah.
Now, I think we can all agree that sometimes the movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe really feel like samey. You know what I mean? And not really in a good way. They just feel really predictable. It feels like they're all kind of just the same movie. I don't remember the last time I saw a superhero movie and afterwards I said, oh boy, I can't wait to see the next one. No, I usually don't care that much. Seeing these movies have become just part of the yearly routine at this point. And with Spider-Man Homecoming, I was having so much fun, I actually left the theater wanting more. I really didn't think I'd be saying that. I'm going to be talking about why this movie worked so well. Although this movie isn't perfect, I still am struggling to find things that I genuinely didn't like about it. The movie is actually hilarious the whole way through. In the whole opening sequence, we see Peter recording everything that happened in Civil War on his iPhone and narrating things like a vlogger.
Okay, so the craziest thing just happened, right? I started a fight with Captain America and I stole his shield and I threw it at him and he's big now. I gotta go. Hang on.
First of all, this scene is adorable. It helps sell people on Tom Holland if they already don't love him. Secondly, it's a clever way to show the events of the previous movie that a lot of people might have skipped. Because it sucks. Civil War sucks. Don't at me. There are a lot of fucking Marvel movies now. A lot. And sometimes you need a way to refresh the audience, and this works pretty well for it. Now, the third thing that this does well is that it shows you that this movie is gonna be funny. And funny in a human way. The quippy Avengers quality of the writing isn't in this movie at all. This is real humor, not people making snarky comments. Most of the jokes are self-deprecating or relatable. We see Peter screwing up in ways that are funny, but not like goofball funny.
Hey, could you do me a favor? Hold on to that. Is this anybody's bite?
Peter uses the Batman voice to interrogate people in this movie because he doesn't know how to interrogate people yet. And that's really funny. Peter's funny, but he's not the punchline of the movie. This is important to make your character actually feel like a person that we would know in real life, as opposed to like Tony Stark or any of the other guys who say something smart and witty, and that's supposed to make us laugh, but we're not really relating to them in any way. The little quippy jokes that we're used to because of the Avengers movies feel more like precise little moments that are put into the movie to make us laugh, so things don't get too dark or too boring. And sure, there are movies that don't even have these little jokes, and their effects are felt pretty strongly. But there's a reason that people are starting to complain about this type of writing, because it really gets old. You can't listen to the same kind of jokes for like 20 movies. Even when Tony Stark shows up in this movie, his quippy nature is played off as him actually being a dickhead. This is the first Marvel movie that I've seen where I thought, holy shit, Tony Stark is an asshole. I would never, ever want to hang out with him.
I have to tell you, not a fan of that Tony Stark.
In this movie, all the characters feel like real people. Flash Thompson is a bully, but he's on the science team with Peter, and he's not actually really that cool himself. He's just more popular than him. Peter and his loser friend aren't just nerds who get beaten up and thrown in lockers. They're just, like, actually unpopular. They're the kind of people that just get ignored, the kind of people that you walk by and don't really think about. Now, when this movie was announced, it was rumored that it would take place in high school, it would be about Peter when he's a kid, and I had a moment where I was honestly really worried about what I like to call #YOLO writing. You know what I mean. Dialogue written by older men who don't understand how kids actually talk. A big example of this is seen in like CW shows like Riverdale, where all the actors are like 30 years old and they have the worst lines of dialogue.
In this age, of Netflix and VOD. Do people really want to watch a movie in a car?
As the godfather of indie cinema, Quentin Tarantino likes to say,
I'm breakfast at Tiffany's, but this place is strictly in cold blood.
I was really worried that this movie would be like that too, but then I saw what the writing team was like. Oh, nothing special except for it's the guy from Freaks and Geeks. Yeah, these guys are younger. Maybe they know how things work a little better. The writing also breaks the monotony of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In a movie with constant reminders about the Avengers and shit like that, it managed to feel like its own thing. It almost didn't really feel like a Marvel movie in just the fact that its tone was completely different than the other ones. I don't know, I wish I could just keep talking about the writing and which jokes I really liked, because I like good comedy a lot, and I especially like seeing comedy as a core staple in a summer action movie. But I can't talk about jokes the whole time, because that's not the only reason that this movie's good. Sure, I think jokes can definitely trick people into thinking a mediocre movie is actually a good movie, but there's a lot more to a movie than just good jokes. Tone is also important in a superhero movie. If the tone is wrong, then the whole movie suffers for it. This movie has a fairly lighthearted tone, but we know that shit can get real if it really needs to. But the one thing that I loved was that even when the tone got really dark, it didn't mean that people had to die. Now name a superhero movie from the last, 10, 20, 30, fucking forever years. All of them, and I mean all of them, will have a handful of people dying. That's just how it is. I get it. It's just collateral damage. That's shit that happens in action movies. Well, what if I told you that nobody has to die for a superhero movie to be good? This movie features count it, one death. And even that one is passed off as a joke. You might not think much of this at first, but it helps the overall tone of the movie. Wouldn't it have sucked if during the Washington Monument scene, one of the kids had died? After we see the kind of person that the Vulture is, after we learn that he's just a father who wants to take care of his family, wouldn't it suck if he just died in the battle? This is actually very important to why this movie works so well. This isn't really an action movie. It's a summer comedy movie featuring Spider-Man punching people. It's a movie driven by comedic performances. Now, speaking of performances, everybody in this movie does a pretty damn good job. Michael Keaton is a good-ass actor. I like that he's actually getting work again because Birdman was so amazing. I also like that he isn't an evil mustache-twirling villain. He feels like a real-ass dude. This is actually how a down-on-his-luck independent contractor guy would act. I love that in the last fight, he doesn't activate kill mode on his glider and try to kill Peter at the last second, because that's not really what he wants to do. However, you can't talk about all this writing and all these characters without talking about Tom Holland as Peter Parker. If you didn't already love him in Civil War, which you should because he's the only good thing in that movie, then you're sure as hell gonna love him now, because he is perfect as Spider-Man, and everybody's gonna be saying it, everybody's already saying it, but it's true. He feels like the lovable dork that Spider-Man is supposed to be. The problem with Andrew Garfield is that he's too cool. I look at him and I'm not like, that's a kid who gets bullied. That's a kid who definitely gets picked on in high school. No, that kid's fucking badass. He skateboards. He's a cool kid. We just gotta look at why being a dork is really important for Peter Parker. In the scene at the ATM near the beginning of the movie with the masked thugs, there's a little moment where he takes a second to think of the joke that he's gonna say before he confronts them. He leans on the wall, he tries to look cool, then he realizes that's not gonna work. There's a lot of little moments like that where he's not really sure how he should be acting as a superhero. Lots of superhero origin movies have the hero making a few mistakes at the beginning, usually for comedic effect, but afterwards they're fairly competent all the way through until the end of the movie. But this movie is full of Peter being a huge dumbass and messing everything up. Not in a way that would be really frustrating to watch, but in a way that is pretty understandable, in a way that we could relate to. Also, I love that we finally get to see how resilient Peter is, and the moment when he decides that he has to be that way. We get to see the moment when he realizes that he needs to be strong-willed and push himself beyond his limits. And in the comics, you see that Peter Parker is the kind of person who doesn't give up. On his Wikipedia page, not giving up is literally listed as one of his superpowers. In the homecoming scene near the end of the movie, we see that even though Peter can just ignore the Vulture and live a normal high school life, and even date the girl that he wanted to date the whole movie, he knows that that isn't the right thing to do. He knows that even though he doesn't have the equipment or the skill to win this fight, he goes in to do it anyway. And this leads to my personal favorite scene in the whole movie. Now for years, I've been waiting, me and a lot of other Spider-Man fans have been waiting to see one of his most iconic moments recreated on screen. Not Gwen Stacy's death, not pulling off the Venom suit in the bell tower. The moment I'm talking about is from Amazing Spider-Man number 33. And in it, we have Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock for a serum that will save Aunt May from a terrible illness. During the fight, Peter gets crushed under the ceiling and all these support structures come down and all this equipment falls on him, and he even says that all this stuff weighs more than a train weighs. However, through determination and sheer force of will, he manages to push all of it off of him. This is issue number 33. Spider-Man hasn't even been around that long, but this is the first time that we really get to see how strong he is when he needs to be. And that scene is actually in this movie, and it's everything that I ever wanted it to be. After being crushed by the ceiling, Peter's calling for help because so far when he's been in a tough spot, he's had someone there to help him. But in this movie, Peter Parker doesn't push off the rubble to save Aunt May, he pushes it off to save himself, because this is a movie about Spider-Man learning to get by without anybody helping him, just by doing it himself, because sometimes no one else is gonna be there but Spider-Man. This is exactly how it should be done. This makes you feel good. This superhero movie makes you feel good. Now, I usually have a hard time recommending superhero movies to people because they aren't for everybody and they're rarely even very good, but people love Spider-Man, and this movie is worth loving. And it's been a little while now, but we got another Spider-Man movie that's actually pretty good. Might I even say, amazing. I'll be here all week and I'll come back for more. 8 out of 10, pretty good flick.
ビルの谷間の暗闇にキラリと光る光の目